Hi everybody, welcome back to the TETRIX RoboBench video series. This is Tim. Today I've got the extreme pleasure of having one of my colleagues with me today. This is Todd McGeorge. Todd is, I'm going to let Todd explain what he does for Pittsco. Todd, what do you do for Pittsco?
I'm a graphic designer, do catalog work, work on the curriculum, any print materials, and trade show displays, so I work large format as well, and that kind of plays into what we're talking about.
So basically, Todd is a go-to guy if you need any kind of output in displays, and that was basically what I needed. One of the things that when you're working with robots, that sometimes you not only just need to build a robot, but you need to create a floor or areas for the robot to actually perform on. And in writing this last curriculum that we did, I had that kind of come up, that situation where I needed to be able to create a diagram. So what I did, I went to Todd as the graphics guy, and I said, Todd, here's a sketch of what we want to put in the book, and he created that very easily from my sketch. But then several days later, I went back to him and said, Todd, I need to be able to scale that up and actually put it on the floor. And you were able to give me some pretty good advice on how to do that, and so we thought that maybe we'd share that with the group. So with that as kind of a background, start with the process, because you had some very pertinent questions for me, right?
Yes.
What were some of the things that you asked me right from the beginning?
Well, I think right off the bat, the concern was how big will this robot be? What will the footprint be of the robot going through the maze? And once we had that figured out, we work with 4x8 foot substrate for trade show displays, and I had some extra pieces of cardboard. So I just took a 4x8 to start off with and drew a grid at 1 foot squares over that. And then was going to we used that when we laid the design out on the floor,
right,
and just taped around the edge of it. So you get a nice square 8 foot by 8 foot area. You set the 4 foot by 8 foot down. And then once you have that side taped, you move it over and tape the next side.
Gotcha. So you basically, let's break it down, right? Mm-hmm. And we started with the fact that we had to determine the size of the robot. And then you asked me, how big we needed to make the size on the floor. Right. And we decided on 8x8. Yeah. And that's when you said, well, if we use like the actual, you mentioned the substrate, either a 4x8 sheet that we doubled, that we were able to do that. But you also made it simpler for me too, in the fact that you said that if we made some of these things on the diagram the same size, that it would actually make putting that down on the floor a little bit simpler. So we actually then did change our diagram a little bit, and we made, because we had locations, we basically made a cityscape, a road, that the robot had to make several turns, and it had different locations it had to go to. So we made each one of those locations the same size, scaled to the robot, right? Yes. And then when we laid that out on our grid, it was easier to do.
Right. You could move it any position, that 2 foot by 3 foot area for the robot to pull into.
Right. Now, one of the things that you said that probably would have made it easier for me to begin with, if I would have started with the grid, right? To put that on a grid so you would make it easier for you to translate that, because you did this digitally to begin with, and then we translated that into the physical. But if I had given you a sketch on grid paper,
that would have
made the whole process a little bit easier.
Yeah, that would have helped.
So one of the things that probably let's talk about first, before we get into that, tools. What's something that a teacher could have on hand? I don't have a big budget. So what are some of the things that I might need to be able to do this, to be able to create this diagram on a floor, whether it be carpet or linoleum or something like that? What would I need?
I think that I used 4x8 foot piece of cardboard because that's what I had laying around. If you have someone at the school who has a piece of 4x8 foot masonite or something like that, that's fine, but it's a little bit hard to store something like that. So maybe a roll of paper that's 4 feet wide, whether it's butcher paper or whatever, and then 4 feet wide by 8 foot long. Make sure that you cut it straight, and then you can put the grid work on there so that you know where you're going to put those tape lines when you lay this thing out.
And they might be able to get something like that if they've got fellow art teacher or something like that that maybe could go to, that if they don't have access to that paper, they might know where to get that, right?
That would be a good place to start. Yeah.
How about measuring devices? They need probably a tape measure, right?
We used a tape measure to just put tick marks at the corners and the Sharpie to mark on the cardboard. And you could do that with paper. Just be careful you don't mark on the floor.
Yeah. Maintenance people don't like that. They have to clean up after that, so not a good idea.
Right. And we were working in an office building on carpet, so you want to be careful with that. So, yeah, and then once you have that laid out, you tape the edges, 3 of the edges, a 4-foot, an 8-foot, and a 4-foot. And then you can put little marks on the tape where those lines are that you've marked every 1 foot on this roll of paper that you have, or this piece of 4x8 substrate. And then move that exactly 4 feet, which would be easy to do because you make one of the lines down the other side. You would
Right.
tape all the way around this thing and then scoot it over 4 feet and tape the other side.
Cool.
I think that's how we did it.
We did. Now, some of the things that we talked about that they maybe want to stay away from, I remember I had suggested maybe a chalk line, and you said, no, that's not a good thing because that might, again, leave stuff behind that a maintenance person might not like or have to clean up after.
Yeah, and you can't get rid of it as easily as you can pull up a little piece of tape.
Right.
know.
What kind of tape? What maybe?
No stick tape, something that would be like the frog tape or the blue tape that you use to
Painter's tape?
when you're painting,
Yeah.
so that you don't have an edge. That stuff doesn't stick down so hard.
And that comes in colors now. I think you can get different colors, so
Yep.
that actually can be beneficial. How about a straight edge?
I had I think it's a 53-inch square that you use for marking masonite, drywall.
Yeah, and but that maybe might not be a have to have
No.
if that's expensive. But if they have access to it, it's good to have.
Yeah, it's good to get that to where you stay square with those lines
Yeah.
that we're going across.
But even like a yardstick could
Yardstick
help
will do it.
be useful. What are some other advice, because we talked about tools that they might need or access to inexpensive ways? What other kind of advice would you give them?
I think something that we talked about earlier is to start small. Like this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So if you have a 1-inch wide straight edge, you can make an 8-inch by 8-inch box, and then with pencil, and then make the lines with pencil, and then use a ballpoint pen or a Sharpie to make your road, and kind of start getting the ideas that way. And if you just photocopied that piece of paper, you would have multiple different layouts that you could do that way, and you can try different things and see what works, and then even cut little pieces of paper for your garages and scoot them around.
So start small scale before you go big scale.
Right, because making all those marks, once you start taping things down, you have a good idea of where you're going to go with this thing before you get to the floor with it, is what I would suggest.
Cool. Well, I hope that makes it a little bit easier for you. Again, it was one of the things that certainly wasn't my area of expertise, and that's why I went to Todd for help with this. But it is important sometimes, again, not just building the robot, but sometimes actually being able to put it down on a floor and create a pattern so that you have a repeatable type of situation for your robot to really test whether your robot is functioning the way you want it to is very important, and sometimes a little bit outside of our comfort zone. So hopefully this gives them some ideas on how they can do that. So like we always say, I'm going to change it up just a little bit this time. Build robots, have fun, but also maybe make a diagram that you can run those robots on and then come back and see us. So talk to you later.